Ladies and gentlemen, esteemed colleagues, friends, good morning, good afternoon, good evening around the world, wherever you are. I have the great pleasure of opening this final event at COP30, the Evidence for Climate Action Pavilion. I have the great honor and pleasure that Sabine Bernabè, VP and Director General of IEG of the World Bank, is here with us for some closing remarks, followed by Jörg, Faust, the Director of the German Institute for Development Evaluation. And then we'll get some impression from myself, also from DEval here on the ground in Berlin. But without further ado, Sabine, the floor is yours for your remarks. Thank you.
Thank you, Sven. Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, everyone. Let me start, first of all, by congratulating you all on a huge success of this Evidence for Climate Action program and pavilion at the COP30. As we know, the planet cannot wait. Renewed global action on climate and biodiversity is needed with greater ambition, and that action must be informed with shared evidence of what works and what doesn't work. We knew that no single evaluation group had all the evidence, and we knew that we had to come together to share our insights under a common platform. And by coming together these past 2 weeks, we made it happen. So to our partners, organizers, presenters, and participants, on behalf of the Independent Evaluation Group of the World Bank, thank you. Thank you for your partnership, thank you for your hard work, and thank you for the valuable insights and evidence that you have shared over the past 2 weeks. I have to say I was very impressed by the rich tapestry of voices from government leaders and researchers to indigenous communities and global institutions. We demonstrated the value of creating a shared space where practitioners, policymakers, and evaluators can engage in honest dialogue about what works and what doesn't on climate interventions. For example, our evidence showed that indigenous stewardship brings stronger ecological performance. Exclusion of indigenous groups undermines both the rights of these peoples and climate and biodiversity goals. Our evidence also showed that we can't just protect conservation areas, but we must integrate climate and biodiversity goals into production areas. Unless they're integrated into business practices in agricultures, fisheries, and forestries that are central to economic development and to ecological pressure, climate and biodiversity goals will not be met. And, for example, we discussed how geospatial tools can provide evaluators with accurate, transparent, and timely insights. They strengthen our ability to accurately track restoration, deforestation, pollution footprints, and climate vulnerability. So, as COP30 concludes, and participants leave Belém having reinforced international ambitions on nature-based solutions, indigenous leadership, and scaling climate and biodiversity finance, I think that we can all agree as evaluators that these big goals will only be achieved if we track them, we test them, and we learn from the results. And for this, it is critical that we work together as an evaluation community to ensure that the commitments made at COP30 become results on the ground. Our planet simply does not have the luxury of time. In the face of the climate crisis, we cannot afford to make mistakes. Policies and programs must be guided by science, by evidence, and by the solution we know make a difference. So going forward, as evaluators, we can bring critical evidence to guide decision-making, course correct, and ensure that climate and nature financing is both effective and equitable. So, for example, we can evaluate how effectively climate and biodiversity considerations are integrated into production sectors. We can assess the quality of our institutional safeguards and policies. we can examine how meaningfully Indigenous peoples are engaged and empowered in operations, including whether resources, partnerships, and decision-making authority flow to them directly. And we can measure whether climate and biodiversity finance is reaching the places and people it intends to serve and strengthening country systems instead of creating parallel structures. So to conclude, a call for us to come together to build on the Evidence for Climate Action initiative, because together we can deliver faster, greater impact than any of us could achieve alone. And together we can track missed opportunities, we can uncover systemic constraints, and we can call for course correction wherever it is needed. Because only by learning constantly, honestly, and collectively can we move fast enough and boldly enough to meet this moment. So thank you very much, and back over to you, Sven. You're muted, Sven.
Thank you, Sabine, for those very inspiring words. Jörg, the floor is yours for your closing remarks.
Thank you. Thank you, Sven. Thank you very much, Sabine. And thank everyone for joining us as we close the E4CA pavilion. I learned that these have been quite remarkable 2 weeks in Berlin. And so my colleagues Sven Harten from DEval and Carmen Nonay from IEG, from the independent evaluation group of the World Bank, opened this pavilion 2 weeks ago, speaking about the small miracle of 4 weeks from concept to reality. And what I learned and heard is that what happened exceeded even those expectations. 2 parallel programs, virtual and in person, reaching global audiences. So a deep gratitude to IEG for expertly organizing those 20 virtual sessions, which reached hundreds, if not thousands of participants globally who couldn't be in Berlin. And I really thank you, IEG, for this outstanding leadership from World Bank colleagues. But my thanks also goes to the DEval team on the ground in Brazil, executed brilliantly under sometimes challenging conditions, often with limited support from local conference company, but they worked as planners, communication specialists, sound engineers, camera operators, moderators and presenters, and of course, contributing researchers and evaluators. So thank you for this logistical and content-wise performance. My thanks also go to sponsors and partners, because none of this would have been possible without sponsors and partners, financial contributions, in-kind support, logistical assistance, and outstanding contributions from research and evaluation. So thank you again, IEG, Rockefeller Foundation, GCF Evaluation Division, GF Evaluation, EBRD, Independent Evaluation Department, the Evaluation Department from AFDB, the Adaptation Fund, of course, OECD, and particularly OECD EvalNet, European Evaluation Society, and Asian Infrastructure Bank. Many, many thanks for all your support in making this possible. And actually, what we have been demonstrating is that evaluation offices can overcome bureaucratic obstacles at unprecedented speed when united around a common purpose. And that's great. So just what I learned is that there have been many session highlights linked to COP30. For instance, the session 1 on indigenous people, biodiversity, and climate, which was perfectly timed with Minister Sonia Gujara's calls for indigenous land demarcation and climate policy. Thousands of indigenous peoples in Berlin demanding create a negotiation role, and evidence showing that indigenous managed lands are most effective in carbon sinks and biodiversity reservoirs. So this session was very well aligned with what happened on the ground. But also the climate finance access and distribution session had a direct relevance to COP30 Baku's to Berlin's roadmap negotiations. And it was critical in improving transparency and accountability mechanisms, which are also subject for negotiation. A third session on adaptation finance and water resilience and urban adaptation was also highly relevant because it was closely aligned and connected to LDC proposals for tripling adaptation finance. So the overall value was not just discussing ambition and commitments, it was asking harder questions about what works, under what conditions, from who, how do we know, and how can we improve? And that's actually the value of independent evidence provision at COP30. COP30 called for COP of Truth by Brazil's Minister of Health. And there has been a strong emphasis on evidence throughout the negotiations. So again, E4CA pavilion perfectly aligned with these proposals, with this call about bridging the gap between evidence and effective action. Clear hunger for evidence-informed space at COP, as highlighted by the CEO of Jeff Carlos Manuel Rodriguez and Sophie Deconinck, UNFCCC Director for Means of Implementation. So again, I think there was a strong value of our initiative of E4CA pavilion in this COP. And finally, let me give you a short statement on multilateralism. My colleague opened the pavilion with a statement that this pavilion demonstrates, and the COP, that multilateralism is so important. And on the other hand, COP30 has been challenging. It has been working under challenging, in a challenging context, difficult negotiations, North-South divisions, fossil fuel phase-out debates. So a lot of challenging conditions which multilateralism is confronted with. But there's hope. If we can do this for a pavilion, if we can set up such a pavilion in such a quick time and overcome all those obstacles which we're facing when trying to do collective action, imagine what's possible if this collaboration spirit extends across all climate action. So again, let me thank you for your efforts. Let me thank you all for bringing evidence to the table, which is not only insightful for research and evaluation, but which is highly relevant in making recommendations and suggestions for better policies and better implementation. Thank you. And I now would like to ask Sven, if you could share some insights from the pavilion on the ground. What have been your experiences as you have been all day at the pavilion and accompanying all those events? Sven, please.
Thank you. Thank you, Jörg. Again, also thanks for those really, really thoughtful and inspiring remarks. So the end result of COP30 is yet to be seen, but we are seeing some encouraging signs from skillful negotiations from the host countries here. So I would also sort of reiterate this message of hope that we heard from both of you, that we'll end COP with a good and positive results of the negotiations. COP as such, well, to be honest, the first days were challenging. It took for all the pavilions, including ours, it took a few days longer to have everything up and running. But then a can testify here from the ground what both of you said. I think this initiative has been a resounding success. If we look at some of the goals that we sort of came up with when starting this initiative, first of all, we said we need to put evaluation evidence visible at the center in the blue zone of the COP. Because in the past, neutral evidence on what works and what didn't have a common platform. It was scattered here and there, if there were opportunities at all to present this. So we made our contribution as evaluation, as evidence, as research community very visible. And we had lots of encouraging remarks from people who passed by the pavilions, asked about this. Okay, this is something new. Can you tell us a bit about? And everybody we've talked to, especially those participants who've been at many COPs, they said, well, this is great. This is so needed. This is the place I want to go there in the future, because such a pavilion is really what has been lacking in the past. And even though, you know, all over COP, we didn't have the big numbers as in Dubai or during other COPs. I would say this COP was a COP of quality, not a COP of quantity. So participants at the pavilion and online weren't maybe the biggest numbers we've seen in the past, but we had the right people. We had the people who would then go back to their delegations, to their offices, and directly inform negotiations. We had researchers who came up with ideas for collaboration. So I think we made our community and our contribution to the COP process very visible. And as you said, you know, this was also testified by very high level participations. Secondly, and actually quite importantly in these times, as you said, you know, about multilateralism, this pavilion has been a shared space for researchers, for evaluators, and not only from our side, but I heard from the climate funds. You know, they came together and they came up with ideas for joint projects, given that they were hearing their presentations. We reached out to the evidence synthesis community. We brought the synthesis community, the research community, and the evaluation community together, and we actually have some concrete ideas for common work in the synthesis space, bringing evaluation and synthesis together. So I think if we continue this initiative next time around, we'll have, with this networking opportunity, we have a much larger, more comprehensive package of research products that we can then offer as a result of this networking happening here. And last but not least, as I said before, of course, we don't want to speak only to each other, right? We want to influence policymakers. And sure, there's room for improvement. This was the first time that we did this, but we had, at least in the second week where I was there, we had at least 30 people from different delegations who would go back to their delegation offices, who would go back sometimes directly into the negotiations, taking the evidence that they heard, that they learned about at our pavilion directly into the negotiations. I think in the future we can still improve this, we can still be better, but we had quality participation from the people in operations, from the people from the negotiations who matter. And this is, of course, the most important thing for us. So I'm very happy, and I'm really grateful to the IAG team for their outstanding support. Very grateful also for my team here on the ground who did a fantastic job. And again, also to all the fantastic contributions. I had the privilege to listen to quite a number of them, and I learned so much. So also personally, for me, it was really enriching. Thank you. And I'll give the floor back to you, Sabine. And sorry, by the way, colleagues in being present here virtually, if you have any questions, you can certainly post them in the chat.
Thank you, Sven. And while we wait to see if any colleagues have questions, I just want to thank you personally and DEval, because you came up with this initiative. It was your idea a few years back, and I mean, we've been thrilled to work with you on this. But I think the DEval team deserves huge thanks and recognition for the concept and the implementation and the proof of concept. And I think, I mean, I guess what we're all saying here is we've proved the point you made, Jörg, about multilateralism. I mean, we've proved that we can come together and that we can be so much more impactful if we come together. If we each tried as evaluators, you know, we're in the business of trying to influence decision making and helping our institutions and our governments and countries learn and be held accountable. But when we come together and bring our evidence together like this, I think our impact is really amplified. And I would like to see if we can leverage this evidence for climate action beyond just the COPs and make it something, an initiative that runs more constantly through times and is not just punctual at the COPs. Because, you know, as I said at the beginning, we don't have the luxury of time. We can't wait for this evidence. We really have to take it to the next level, like you were saying, Sven, and make sure we influence policy making. So if we can focus on how do we bring this to policymakers and influence policymakers, it would be great. Jörg, I don't know if you want to come in here, or I might have another question.
Yes, if there aren't any questions in the chat.
There are no questions in the chat at this point.
Yes, thank you, Sabine. Perhaps then we, I would like to close to a certain point and looking also a little bit into the future. Yeah, as Sven has mentioned, as a starting point, this initiative was important, but it is clear that we will have to learn and we can improve on our way. But on the success side, I would like to highlight 3 points, perhaps again. First, there's a clear demand and need for dedicated evidence space at the COPs. So there is a room for us, and this is essential, and it is not a nice to have. It's crucial that the COPs have such spaces, particularly in times where other spaces for open discussing climate issues are closing or getting narrower. So what we have seen is a clear demand and also a need for such a space as our pavilion. Secondly, here we have now evidence for ending with the prejudice. The evaluation community can move with remarkable speed and agility. And that's an important lesson for me also. And thirdly, I think the hybrid model works. So by having implemented a hybrid model, we have extended our reach far beyond the blue zone, and that's worthwhile pursuing in the future. My question now is, and perhaps even I go further, and my suggestion perhaps even would be that could E4CA become a permanent feature at COPs? are we in the process of creating an important brand for collective action in independent evaluation and research? Hashtag E4CA has the potential to create or to become a really impactful brand. So I think it is worth exploring together with our partners, to consult our partners in the coming weeks about the future of E4CA. And thus, from my perspective, I would like to close again with gratitude for every partner who believed in the vision of our attempt, for every gratitude for every speaker who shared his experiences and evidence, for every participant who has been listening and engaged, for every team member who made a complex operation look easy. And my belief is that conversations, presentations on evidence have only started, they will continue. And that connections we made during the last 2 weeks will generate new collaborations, new insights, and will improve policy over the long term. And that evidence shared will inform decision makers in development institutions, in climate funds, and in national governments. So COP30 may be ending, but evidence for climate action work has just begun. Thank you all.
Thank you, Jörg. Those were amazing closing words. However, we do have a couple of questions in the chat, and I would propose that we take the last 4 minutes that we have remaining to answer at least some of them. So one question is about how do you see misinformation affecting your work? And then there are 2 questions, if you allow me, that I could start with while you take a few seconds to think about the challenging bit of misinformation, where we are asked about the involvement of Global South partners and how to get our message out to democratic actors beyond the technical audiences. So on those second and third question, I'm happy to report that we were able to share access to the Blue Zone through the badges with 3 actors from the global South. So with the limited number of badges that we had for this pavilion, we were able to invite colleagues from Latin America and from Africa to join COP. Also, I would say in many of our events, we had indigenous communities, we had researchers, actors from the Global South being present. So I think in terms of the program, the contribution and the actual access, we did quite a good job. In the future, if this is going to be sort of a more ongoing event, I think we can look into co-creating with our partners in the Global South the program and the sessions in a much more participatory way, which now was just for the lack of time not possible. Also, we had many climate activists in the pavilion and also on the panels. So I think the involvement, you can always do better, but I think we are starting to get a good job here done. And now floor is again for you to talk about misinformation in the last minute.
Maybe I'll pick up here and let Jörg close officially again. Yeah, just on the point of misinformation, it's very important. Of course, we live in in an age of accelerating speed of technological change, and many times we don't know what we can believe or not believe anymore. This isn't just in evaluation, but in our everyday lives. And I think there's a couple of things that are really important. I mean, first of all, the rigor, triangulation, you know, and the rigor of our methods. I think more than ever, we need to produce rigorous evaluations that rely on multiple sources of evidence and methods that we triangulate in order to, you know, to make sure that we are not misinforming. Second, the responsible use of AI. It's extremely important that we work as an evaluation community on developing ethical standards on and governance on the use of AI, and it's moving so fast, and this is something we need to do together. And in fact, in the evaluation cooperation group, which brings together the MDB's evaluation functions, we are working on that, but I think we need to extend this more broadly. Third, advocacy. I mean, I think as evaluators, we have to play an even bigger role in advocating for the truth and for the real facts, and make sure that we fight the misinformation with real evidence from our evaluations on platforms such as this one, the Evidence for Climate Action. I agree with Jörg, needs to continue beyond the COP. We have a proof of concept, we have a brand, and we should build on it as a source of reliable, honest, truthful evidence. And then finally, I just wanted to make a point about how can we better involve the Global South partners. You know, in IEG, we think it's very important to include the voices of beneficiaries and of affected populations in our evaluations, and especially in, well, going forward, we would like to include their voices more, especially in the design, for example, of questions, the questions that are evaluation questions that concern them and not just our shareholders. And also, of course, in the dissemination and learning from our evaluation findings. So yes, with that, let me close, and since I'm not going to have the floor again, just thank everybody. The long list that Jörg pointed to, thank you. This was a group effort, and I think we're very, very impressed with the success. Thank you. Over to you, Jörg.
Thank you. I just can support what Sabine has said, and I think just to make a final point of the disinformation, I think we have a learning issue in front of us as evaluators and researchers. So I think it's worthwhile that we use sound methods and sound designs and come up with clear and very robust evidence. But then we have to communicate, and we have to communicate in an easy way, in an understandable way, so the ordinary citizens get also the main message. And this is an important task. We can improve on that, and I think that is a very basic kind of a counter strategy, communicating in an easy and understandable way and trying to outreach to the ordinary citizens on the planet. Thank you very much.
And with this, we close. Thank you, everybody, for joining us, and see you back at COP31, the latest, or potentially before. Thank you, Sabine.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jörg.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.